Welcome to the Historical Interface Museum. You have selected
Britain, 1750 to 1900, expansion, trade and industry.
all evidence loaded and ready for investigation.
Load the options, Curator.
Certainly. Improvements. They discovered better ways to keep roads drained, and non-profit-making turnpike trusts were set up. They charged people to use the roads, then used the money to keep them in good repair. London to Edinburgh, 1750, that would have taken 10 days. But by 1836, on a good road, you could do it in 2.
But you can't shift much in coaches like those. So how do you get a whole load of cement to Bradford?
Gallery reform.
The Canal Gallery.
Canals?
Of course, a marvel of early industrial engineering, and a highly efficient way of carrying goods from place to place.
Text to visor.
If you examine a map of England, you'll find, because of these new man-made canals, there's nowhere south of Durham more than 15 miles from transport by water. In our industrial areas, there's now cheap and easy communication from the very heart of each town to our chief commercial ports and to every other part of the kingdom.
So which one was used to shift line?
The Leeds Liverpool.
Select aerial probe. More data, please.
Completed in 1816. Total length 141 miles.
There were 300 horses in stables along its banks, 1,000 barges, 1,200 people employed by the canal company.
It's a lot of work building this just for line.
That was just one of the things this canal carried. It took pig iron, slate, flagstones, grain, machinery.
Load graphic.
All right, I'll have that one.
Bradford selected.
Is that a mill?
Salts Mill in Saltaire.
Right.
Bingley selected.
What's that?
The Bingley 5-rise locks.
Load vertical plane.
Locks were needed to get barges up and down hill.
Burnley selected.
Request ground probe.
Trafalgar Mill.
It's right in the water.
Factories were built beside canals because industry needs transport to survive. And they need cheap transport so the goods are not too expensive for the customer. These were warehouses below and weavers' houses above. That's Clock Tower Mill. It once produced woolen goods.
And they shifted the goods by canal, right?
Raw materials in and finished textiles out through Liverpool and across the world.
More data.
By road, one horse could carry 150 kilos. By canal, one horse could pull a barge carrying 25 tons.
Here's the main warehouse and a wharf for loading and offloading the barges. Accrington, Blackburn, Chorley, Wigan, Burscough, a canal town where the barges brought night soil from Liverpool.
Night soil.
Actor loop engaging.
Foul work, but someone has to do it. Bigger Liverpool gets, bigger the problem. All that night soil, all that shit, pardon the phrase, clogging up the privies and overflowing into some poor Egypt's cellar.
Ugh, that's gross. What's this got to do with trade?
There's a problem, a pile of human excrement in Liverpool. But transport, the canal, comes to the rescue and removes it in bulk. And not only that, they sell the manure to farmers, so trade's boosted too. Better transport, more trade.
Data to visor. Pig iron, 1750, output 28,000 tons. 1850, output 2,250,000 tons. Cotton, 1750, 1,300 tons. 1850, 3,600,000 tons. Coal, 1750, 4 million tons.
So if they're making all this stuff, who are they selling it to?
The fingers of trade stretch far beyond British borders, for production on this scale demands a world market. Since the 16th century, British merchants have taken on the perilous oceans, establishing trading ports in India, Africa, South America, and the Far East. But ports aren't enough. Soon more and more land falls under British control. An empire grows, and trade's the reason why. It's easy to sell British-made cotton, iron, and manufactured goods when there's no competition. And an empire provides a reliable supply of cheap raw materials for British factories. Some call it exploitation, but the...
What does he mean, exploitation?
Take the slave trade. Merchants were sending ships laden with calicos, beads, flints, and powder to West Africa. These were exchanged for gold, ivory, and African slaves. The slaves were taken across the Atlantic and sold in the West Indies and in America. And that's what paid for many of the goods imported into Britain.
But that's horrible.
Sequence ended.
What now? Something on ports.
Gallery reform.
You could select London, Bristol, Liverpool, Glasgow.
I'll stick with Liverpool.
Aerial probe selected. Liverpool, population 1,700, 500 people. 1,800, 54,000 people.
That's the tail end of the Leeds-Liverpool Canal directly below you. Stanley Dock. The Mersey in the distance.
More data.
1700 to 1790, sugar imports rise by 500%. Rum and tobacco, 300%. Cotton, 5,000%. Coal exports rise by 500%.
Wheel round to get a full view of the dock complex.
One of the older docks.
How can you tell?
Sailing ships dock end on, so they built the docks square. Steamships have to berth alongside the quay, so the later docks were built more rectangular.
It all looks so modern. Give me a text.
There's a forest of masts in the distance, and tall chimneys vomiting clouds of black smoke. And along the quayside you see men with their faces stained blue with indigo, or maybe a group of blonde-haired sailors chattering German, or a black sailor with a cotton handkerchief twisted around his head. The air stinks of tobacco and rum, and the stench of hides, of coffee and spice, of sulfur, and of the ugly fungus smell of dry rot.
Request ground probe.
Okay. This is Stanley Dock. It's not used anymore. Even in the way they built this dock, you could see the benefits of trade and transport. Look down. The stone on the edge of the dock, that's granite from Kirkmabrec in Scotland. And to your right, the oak and elm in the dock gates, most likely from Northern Europe. Go left. The blue granite sets would be from the Channel Islands. And an iron capstan from Colebrookdale in Shropshire.
Is that a warehouse?
Yes, probably for tropical goods. Spices, maybe. That was the largest warehouse in the world. The Stanley Dock Tobacco Warehouse, 1901. It needed 30,000 panes of glass, 27 million bricks.
I'm going in.
115,000 square meters of storage space, and just for tobacco.
Why are the ceilings so low?
If you stack tobacco too high, it gets crushed.
Give me another problem that transport had to solve.
Okay.
Problems loading. Newspapers.
News isn't news if it takes too long to get hold of. So how do you circulate papers nationally within 24 hours?
Holiday makers.
How do you make trips to the seaside cheap enough for everyone?
Fish.
How do you get fish from the coast to inland markets and still keep it fresh?
Fish selected. So transport to the rescue.
But what type of transport?
It's something inland, right? And it's got to be quick.
So canals are no good.
And trucks weren't invented.
And don't forget the state of the roads.
So... no, I don't know.
You want something cheap. You want something fast. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
The steam locomotive. They revolutionized transport. They played a vital role in the Victorian economy. Developed in the early days, mostly to help the textile and mining industries, but the biggest impact was on people.
Today we had a lark of the very high order. The locomotive machine was on the railway, and I had the satisfaction, for I can't call it a pleasure, of taking a trip in it, 20 miles an hour. I timed it with my watch. We were all quite fearful of suffocation. The motion is very frightful. It's flying, really, and you can't think of anything but instant death. One spark burnt Mr. Ross's cheek, and another a hole in Lady Maria's silk petticoat.
I felt as if no fairy tale was ever half as wonderful as what I saw. 35 miles an hour, swifter than a bird flies, for they tried the experiment with a pigeon. You can't imagine what it feels like to be cutting through the air, and all without any visible cause of progress, other than this magical machine, with its white, flying breath and rhythmical, unvarying pace.
Railway mileage. 1825, 27 miles. 1850, 6,000 miles. 1875, 13,500 miles. 1900, 18,500 miles.
How did they build so much?
Building the railway has been compared with the construction of the pyramids or the Great Wall of China, and it's a fair comparison. They weren't using mechanical diggers and forklifts, just spades and picks and a bit of muscle.
Can I see that?
Print to visor.
Navvies working on the London to Birmingham line. By 1847, there were 250,000 navvies in Britain. They had a reputation of being fierce, strong, big eaters and fighters. A navvy was expected to shift up to 5 tons of earth a day.
All right. Give me a reconstruction.
Animate actor.
Now, when a cutting's being dug, it's my job to make the running. See, there's planks up the side of the cut, and we got to take the earth up and over the top. Now, the horse gin takes most of the weight, but say the nag stumbles, or you lose your grip in the mud. You got to throw the barrow one way, yourself the other, or the earth will topple straight back down on top of you. One man got killed that way last week. Yeah, Teapot Punch, his name was.
Teapot what?
The navvies were very colourful characters. Their nicknames reflect this. Fighting Jack, Contrary York, Gypsy Joe, Bellerophon, Thin-Lipped Blondin.
Yeah, okay.
Now, they say there's as much chance of meeting death in this line of work as there is for the soldiers in Crimea. Aye. Yeah, but when you see what you made, the train goes rolling by, and the people as if turned to blocks of stone. And the women, all best gowns and bonnets, garping. And the cows in the field spitting out the cud because they seen out like it. Yeah. It's building the future, though. Oh, yeah, that's what it is.
Railways were unstoppable. Just check out the effects they had.
Shops, fresh fish, day trips, standard time.
Standard time.
Before the railways, you had to adjust your watch the further west you went. Cirencester was 7.5 minutes behind London. Bridgewater, 14. A railway timetable meant everyone had to use Greenwich Mean Time.
Holiday resorts, management skills, commuting, political parties, advertising, industry, railway towns.
That one.
The building and repairing of engines, coaches, and trucks was a new industry in itself. Where the company set up their works, towns appeared. Doncaster, Swindon. Crewe didn't exist in 1841. By 1900, it had a population of 42,000.
Milk, farm produce, landscape, housing, freight, business, dialects.
Dialects.
The way people speak. Just one example of how the railways brought the country closer together. Dialects across the country softened the more people traveled, so there was more chance someone from Wales could understand someone from Norfolk.
Diet, suburbs, newspapers, jobs, foreign expansion.
Why foreign expansion? Can't build railways on water.
No, but you can export railways. The materials, engines, carriages, miles of iron track taken across the sea by steamship. The know-how, the engineering skills, surveyors, contractors.
Data to visor.
British locomotives link up the wild expanses of Canada, Australia, and South Africa. There are even plans for British colonies the whole length of Africa. What next? A Cape to Cairo railway? Britain in 1900 is still a great trading nation, with half the world's merchant ships, but other countries are challenging Britain's lead. Germany, the USA, Russia, Japan, countries that will dominate the history of the 20th century. So, more and more, Britain takes the easy option. It relies on its empire, its captive markets. They talk of it with pride, the greatest empire the world has ever seen, but they've lost the urge to compete, the urge that created the empire in the first place. There were children running barefoot in British streets and slums to make your hair curl, but most Britons face the 20th century with confidence, secure industrial giants, worthy to rule an empire on which the sun never set.
But it didn't last, did it?
Look around. What do you think?
All systems disengaging.